Welcome to Front Porch America, and this is the interview a lot of you have been waiting for. A lot of you reached out to me to have me ask this person to come on the show, so I did. And after a few days, he said he had to pray about it, and he finally decided that he would come on the show to talk about a very controversial subject and video that he posted 3 years ago. Now, the subject is one of two subjects I can't stand to talk about because nobody can agree to disagree. Um, that's religion and politics. But in this interview, we were going to speak a lot about religion and regarding the video that was published 3 years ago by Pastor Darrick Holloman. Now, one thing about my podcast is hopefully everybody knows by now I'm a 100% free judgment. I'm not going to judge you for what you've done in your past or what you believe or what you do. I have a very open mind. I'm very open-minded. And I think that's what's kind of wrong with the world today is everybody has kind of closed their minds off and um, don't allow things to come in that should come in or really think about it. Without elaborating anymore, this is Front Porch America's controversial interview with Pastor Darrick Holloman. Well, it's that time again to thank our sponsors here at Front Porch America. And without further ado, here they are. So, welcome to Front Porch America. I am here with Brother Darrick Holloman. Darrick is a longtime native of Crittenden County. And we had a lot of viewers reach out and wanted you to come on to the podcast. Wanted to see if I can get you on the podcast because of a video that pretty much went viral. How long ago? 3 years ago? 3 years ago. And we don't really have to hit that video and break that video down, but we can talk about what's happened with you after the video. You know, have you received a lot of backlash? Was there some good things that come out of the video? Was there some good things that come out of that, that whole situation? So with that said, before we get started, I always try to give everybody a gift. This is a gift from my sponsors.
Oh, wow.
There's a few things. We even threw a cup in there for your wife. So
All right.
make sure she gets that. But our sponsors are pretty big here, so they
Awesome.
support me really well, and I like to try to give some things out to them. The Fat Boy app is a mom and pop restaurant locator.
Okay.
Good Christian people own it, and if you're ever traveling, you download that Fat Boy app, subscribe to it, and you can find all these mom and pop restaurants all over the place, and they're growing every day. It's a pretty cool. It's a one of a kind app. There's not another app like it. You can hit the big search engines for restaurants near me. 9 times out of 10, it's going to pull up a lot of the chain restaurants.
Yeah.
This app here, mom and pops, local food trucks, whatever, man. So
That's
it's
what I'm
pretty
interested
cool.
in. Good.
Yeah, it is really
Awesome.
cool.
Thank you so much.
So with that being said, we'll just go ahead and get started. And again, thank you for driving all the way out here. Man, I rushed home this morning from work and ran into a bunch of traffic on the bridge. They're working on the shoulder or something up there on the Evansville Bridge and Henderson Bridge. So I was afraid I was going to be late, but I think it worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and dive into it. I'll let you talk about what started this all, and we'll just kind of give a general base layer of how that video came about.
Okay.
If you don't care.
Yeah. So the video came about because old friend of mine, not close friend, but went to school together, noticed that he'd been going through a pretty bad season through social media. You know, we keep up with each other on that. But I had seen that when he came out of that, he had gotten serious about the Lord. Was posting things on social media that were super encouraging to me and comforting. Had been praying for him. And then I began to notice his involvement, particularly in life in Christ. That just piqued my interest. Then I got some other words from some other friends and other pastors about this event that was taking place. And so then, it became like my concern for him. And this is surely not what it sounds like it is. I mean, by that time, there was already, rumors, gossip, conflict, and, debate about what was really happening or what wasn't really happening, and I really didn't want to get into that game. So my goal, my motivation for going was, one, to not take anybody else's word for it, but also I was going out of concern for him, and perhaps put my eyes on this and be able to reach out to him personally. Um, However, after 2 nights, I think 11 hours in those two meetings, um, I just walked away so incredibly overburdened for what I had seen and what I'd witnessed. I felt compelled by what I would say the Holy Spirit that I had to do something beyond just talk to him. So never was my goal to make a video or anything of that nature. After 2 nights, I felt like the whole time home, I was like, I felt compelled to do this. Sought some counsel, didn't really want to wade into the conflict of the mud throwing,
Right.
and really, it didn't. I mean, I posted that on Facebook through YouTube, but a lot of stuff took place in the comments. I never even read most of those comments.
Yeah.
I never really wanted to do a follow up. Of course, there was a lot of follow up, but that's the reason why I went, to have a fair mind, to see it myself, and it just kind of snowballed into. I ended up recording that video, so I went on a Monday night and Tuesday night. I ended up going to the church and recording that video from like 11 at night to 2 in the morning,
Oh, wow.
on that Friday. So 3 or 4 days later, just compelled and in my spirit that I have to do this. I've collected my thoughts, collected my notes. I had to have a response. And then, even then, when I recorded, I wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to go publish this.
Right.
I let friends watch it. I let my wife watch it. And because it was all unedited.
What was their reaction after they watched it?
My friends, pastoral friends, people that could understand, same boat. They were supportive. My wife was always supportive. She certainly probably brought a couple points out, like here and there, questions,
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said it that way, kind of thing.
Because
We all do that.
I watched the video. I've actually watched it probably a total of 3 or 4 times,
Okay.
maybe five, but let's just say 3 or 4 to be on the safe side. And I can tell the very first time I watched that video, I can tell that it was a sincere, concerning video that you put out. A lot of times you see these videos, especially in politics, where they're trying to dispute different things. You can just right off the bat, you can just feel that the negative energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get that from you. I got like sincere, concerning
Yeah.
emotions from you is what I got, and
Well,
it was really compelling actually. And I think my dad is the one, like I said just a few minutes ago, is one that said, "Hey, check this out," and we ended up watching it, and I guess that video went viral. So yeah, the wife said, "Okay, let's touch on
yeah.
some things,"
I
and
think most of the conversations after I let friends watch it was, are you ready for the backlash to this?
right,
Yeah, because like you're not just gonna post this and that's gonna be it. Like, and so that was a lot of prayer. And again, I don't. My goal is not to like wade into conflict to add one more stone to like the he said she said of what was already going on. Um, there's a sense in which it's like, man, it's not my monkey, not my circus.
hmm,
It's not my church, and that's for sure. And it is my hometown. It'll always be my hometown, but I don't live there.
right.
So I don't personally have anything to gain or
You
to
don't have a
lose by
personal
this.
vendetta.
Yeah, which was the motivation to not do it. It's like, why? I don't have anything here. But then like what would the same thing that was a motivation not to do this, just let it go, actually ended up being the fuel to do it. I felt like I had to. I converse with other leaders, spiritual leaders, and including pastors in the area. The concern was universal. There's not a single one of the churches that I spoke to that this had not affected them in a difficult way.
And that's all denominations of churches, not just one single denomination, or was it just
That's a good question. I I can tell you, I talked to seven men that 6 of them were Baptists, which is a whole lot of Baptists around here
well,
for sure.
that's why
But yeah,
there's a huge Baptist.
but yeah, mostly guys that I had at least known some of. all of them had a unique situation where, and this is not a criticism of them, it because of the relationships they had and because of the situation, it was difficult for them to address it.
Yeah.
In a way that it would be hard for a local I'm not saying a local pastor hasn't or shouldn't address it. They certainly should. But it would have been really difficult for them to have done what I ended up doing without them having at least the appearance of a personal vendetta. You know? And so and I'm glad to hear you say that you thought it was sincere. I mean, not everybody felt that way.
Right.
But that was important for me to clarify my motivation. Because I wanted people to see I have really nothing to gain from this whatsoever. I have something to lose, you know.
When I said that, I meant that you weren't out for to hurt anybody. You weren't putting that video out to destroy the church or destroy. It was more of an awareness concern thing. And I mean that's what I mean by it. So I don't want anybody taking it out of context. Like, he's just taking up for him because I'm not taking up for anybody. I don't have a dog in this fight at all. But I just really thought that your message was a concerning, sincere message. Rather, I mean, it could have been about kids eating Play-Doh, and it's people can actually be concerned. There's that theory: birds are not real. A lot of people think birds are drones from the government, and people are sincere. I love Bigfoot. I like the story of Bigfoot. Do I think he's real? I mean, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff out there we don't know about. So it's kind of that sincere passion that you have for your brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's how I took it. So when you posted the video and it started getting traction, right? It started circulating. How long before that did you I guess my question is, did you receive any hurtful, threatful comments or feedback?
Well, let me say this. It definitely went off more than I expected. I think there were 15,000 views in the first, maybe within the first month. Might be up to 19 or something now. Now, I don't do YouTube. I don't do editing videos, but I do have access to that little studio or whatever thing on there to say actually it wasn't watched as much as it looks like.
Right. A lot of people click on
a whole lot. So, and that's both by the supporters. There are people, and granted, hey, it's long. I'm like, you don't have to watch my video. It's really long. I'm really thankful I've found the 2 times or 1.5 times button on YouTube to make things faster. But there's a lot of people that were eager to weigh in positively or negatively that when push comes to shove, you didn't watch it, supporters and haters, if you will. So 16% of it was watched. No, it might have been less than that. I think I equated it to, of the 19,000 viewers, the average person watched 16 minutes of it. And I know that there are lots of people that really did watch it all the way through, and people that I've talked to that said, I watched it 3 times, good, bad, or ugly. And I'm thinking, okay, for every one of those, then there must have been somebody that watched it 3 minutes of it.
Right.
And then they went and talked about it for 3 hours or talked about it online. So I almost want to push back to say it actually wasn't. In fact, if you're even watching this, and you have a really strong opinion about it, positively or negatively, you probably shouldn't air that unless you've actually seen the footage,
Right.
Because people, they didn't. And I can see, where they've clicked and the parts they've skipped and the meatiest parts sometimes. Yeah. But it gained traction in a way that was unexpected. So I had in the first, I'm going to say month, it might have been 6 weeks. I had 450 messages through Facebook.
That's a lot.
Yeah. The day I spent so much time. My messenger on Facebook broke. It broke, and to this day, I will come across a profile and I'll click it, and it'll have a message with a number 1 by it. And I'm like, "What's that?" And I'll click it, and there was a message they sent me 3 years ago that it just didn't flag, or I didn't see it, or it got lost in a folder. It broke. I tried to respond to people as quickly and as I could. But that was just within the first month. I got personal letters from all over. I got a lot from North Georgia, which is the origin of this immersion revival stuff that kind of spilled in. So I heard from believers in that area that would tell me stories of just the damage that stuff has done to their community and to the families that they've known. I got an overseas letter from somebody in Europe. I got people reach out to me from Ohio and Illinois and some churches in Kentucky for various things. hey, my pastor is splitting our church. He just brought a swimming pool into the sanctuary, and we don't know what to do. And a lot of concern. But I will say this, of the 450 messages, and that was just the first month. I mean, hardly a month will go by, maybe now 2 months, where I still won't receive a phone call or an email because somebody stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
In all that time, two responses were negative or critical or
Right.
ugly, you know, I mean, however you want to say, just like
Yeah.
real legitimate pushback. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have said that. That was surprising to me.
That is
I got
really
some
interesting.
secondhand criticism, you know, of, well, I'm delivering this on behalf of somebody else, you know.
Yeah.
But in terms of anybody that just kind of, now I think some people publicly, there was some public backlash.
Yeah.
In the comment section. Again, like I didn't read it. I just didn't have time to get in the mud. But personal, private, like, hey, this is where I think you're wrong. I didn't appreciate this. 2 people.
So did you during those comments, and you said you didn't read them all because it sounds like there's a lot of them. Did you have any good constructive criticism conversations with people?
Constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, legitimately, and people that reached out, like, so all the rest of those were people saying thank you and or telling me their story that I had no idea about. I mean, I had people that, you know, hey, I love you and I'm proud of you. Hey, like one particular person that was like, I really think this was a little too strong when you said this, when you said this. Otherwise, I'm really proud of you. And they were probably right. I mean, they were
Right.
there's always things you would do a little differently. Interestingly, since I made that video and watched it originally, I have not watched it again until I prepared for this. I didn't go back and watch it, but yeah, and they were right. You know, there's always things you do a little differently. You know, I would have done, maybe I wouldn't have said this or would have said that, but so I had some of that for sure.
Yeah. So, and you talk about not watching it, with my podcast, I go back and I rewatch some of my podcasts and I do it because I want to see where I can get better at, right? I'm still learning a lot of my equipment. I'm not a tech savvy guy at all, so I'll go back and watch it, but I can see where you wouldn't, that's not what you don't do these videos on a constant for that reason or whatever. So you didn't really have a need to go back and watch it. And so let's talk about, for those who haven't seen the video, and we're going to, I'm really bad about remembering to put links in my stuff when I post it, but the video I'll may even share it so people can watch it, because if they want to watch it, obviously they can look you up and find it on their own. But let's talk about some of the incidents. The main reason for this immersion thing, the miracles. Let's get into that. I know the story about the parents that lost their 6-year-old. That was just kind of like, man, that's desperate. They're desperate for answers, or desperate for peace. And you talked about that. So just kind of go over just a few of the stories that you heard, or that you witnessed. There's just some stuff that you witnessed that night, those 2 nights.
Well, I mean, I go through in detail in the video. Like, I don't know if I said every one of them. There was
Right.
so much. This person came for that. This person came for that. So that's where my heart, like, this is real pain. This is real desperation. In terms of miracles, I should probably clarify. Like, I totally believe in miracles.
Yeah.
I totally believe. I think the term's overused. I think if everything's a miracle, then nothing's a miracle.
So what's a miracle in your thoughts, your mind, your definition?
That's a good question. I think that I would have to say, like, how do I want to articulate this the best way possible? This is something in which is physically and naturally unexplainable. That might be, maybe that's the simplest way to put it. So God does miracles. God also works through provision, and it's no less amazing when God works through the provision of an antibiotic or an ibuprofen. It doesn't condescend, or no, transcend. That's the word I'm looking for.
Transcend, yeah.
It doesn't transcend science and reason, because we can explain how it happened. Well, he got this antibiotic and this infection stopped. And just because we can trace the details of it and we have that capacity doesn't make it any less amazing that God did it, right? we like to focus on the miracles though. It's like those are sexier, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, do you want to be cured of your type 2 diabetes, or do you like want to, I don't know, diet and exercise?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'd rather just
Sit
pop a
here and
pill
yeah.
or get immersed, you know. That's sexier, right? It's like it happened. There's no explanation for it. I just went to the doctor. My type 2 diabetes was gone, you know. Well, it didn't just appear. It appeared for a reason,
Right.
and therefore it won't just go away. We're always enamored with the miracle, the quick fix, right? But I say all that to say, I do believe in miracles. I do believe that when God certainly has the capacity to, and when his people seek his face, he chooses to do things that are completely unexplainable. I have friends in the medical field that, there's a lot of times things happen that are marvelous that can be explained by God's provision through doctors, provision through treatment. And that's still amazing. That's still amazing. Like, we should still thank God for that. But they also have stories where, like, man, I can't explain that. I know they saw God's face. I know they prayed. And I just haven't seen anything like it before, you know? And God should absolutely receive like the glory for that, because he can do anything, right?
Right.
So I'm not anti-miracle. In fact, I would argue in some ways I'm more pro-miracle, because I think that a fence should be built around it so that we can celebrate what is actually a miracle, you know? And also celebrate all the awesome small little things that God does every single day that he is still worthy of being praised for, you know, worship.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's pretty deep actually. That's pretty cool. And in the field that I work in, I work around a lot of doctors and stuff, and I've had doctors on cases that come into the emergency room and it's just like, he shouldn't be here. What we did should not have worked, but it worked. And, is that a miracle? Through provision? Probably so. God gives the intellect and knowledge to us as people to help, kind of help that system along the way. So these people are getting dunked in this pool, and this evangelist or this pastor or whatever is claiming a miracle right then and there. Boom, that quick. Has anybody reached out to you about actually being cured of anything that night? Or
yeah, I mean, I think there have been people that night. No, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, and I'm not negating.
And you probably didn't follow with a lot of people,
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you had heard of anything or not.
I mean, I had people that said or through secondhand said, well, basically I went there and this happened and I experienced this. Okay, I'm not here to tell you that you did or didn't experience something. Right. Okay, that's fine, and very well maybe it happened. But I mean, for every one of those I've heard and witnessed, 10 that were like, oh, that I guess that didn't work. It was like the stamp was put on that night. This happened, which is like a whole lot of pressure, right? If somebody tells you that you're healed of your back, and you're in the water, like, what kind of pressure do you have to like get out without,
right?
Don't wince.
Yeah, because I mean, you're trying to, and I've never been put in that position, but I could just imagine if I would want to help his ego, I guess, or whatever. Hey, I can't walk, but I may stumble around, but I'm gonna try to walk for this guy, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's that faith that these people have is so strong that they 100% believe that they're healed, and they make themselves walk when they couldn't walk, or see when they could. I don't know how to explain it. But it just seems like a lot to me. It talks about God doing miracles. God does do miracles. It seems like a lot of people in one place for just, Crittenden County, Marion, Kentucky. God's here tonight, and he's going to heal everybody in here. I'm telling you that you get in the swimming pool and hold your nose so the water don't go up in it. We're going to heal you of your stage 4 cancer. And, and for that not to come true, I've heard of stories of these people that being immersed, blaming themselves, then blaming the evangelist for, obviously not being healed and not happening for them. People losing faith in God because of it.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a big concern. I felt like maybe that you were trying to get across.
The evangelist is never wrong, right? The preacher, the healer is never wrong. So if something doesn't take, and God's not wrong, so it only leaves you to blame. And that's where it's like this, again, I think I said this in the video. like this kind of bad teaching is not a victimless crime. It's not a, it doesn't like, real people get really hurt and spiritually hurt because they have trusted in the Lord because somebody told them, somebody that, is supposed to be a spiritual leader told them, dot this I and cross this T and you'll be healed. And they weren't healed. And then they put their hands back and said, well, hey, I told you, you obviously didn't cross the T and dot the I properly.
Right.
So they dot it again and they cross it again and it still doesn't work. Where does that leave you? It only leaves you with shame and guilt. And so that may be their world, but the people and the victims in that world are in all of our world.
Yeah.
And though I would like boldly say like that their church is not my church is not their church. Unfortunately, that person won't come to my church or your church because in their mind it's just Christianity, it's just God, and it's just Bible, and I've been harmed over here, and so I'm done. And I mean, of all the people, like we this is still the Bible Belt. Even where I live now in Illinois is sort of still the Bible Belt. There's still a lot of churches and a lot of Christian influence. But when you talk to people like, why are you not going to church? And for every 5 people that identify as a Christian in this area, one of them probably faithfully attends services. The same stories, and I've talked to hundreds, are coming up. It's basically, they always talked about money, which is sometimes true.
Right.
They always talk
Just
about
like recently, the big that preacher that said lock the doors. Did you see that video?
money. I did hear something about that.
We're not letting y'all only live until we get $40,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, there's
So
some pressure.
that's and there was a lot of videos out there of other pastors and preachers kind of lightening the situation during their service that they record and be like, y'all go lock the door, and then be like, just kidding,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that, and it's stuff like I've seen members leave because of the man, right, of who their pastor is. Well, they're getting rid of him, so I'm not going to this church no more. They follow the man. And I was guilty of it at one point in time in my life. I thought this is ridiculous, and then I was like, I'm not going to the church for the right reason. Then,
But there's 3. So it's the money, it's the church split, and moral failure. Those are the 3. I mean, almost every person. Yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm not going to church. Well, it's going to be one of those 3 reasons. And so that church split and moral failure is kind of maybe combined here. But the moral failure and the hypocrisy of the way they spoke and the way that they treated me, like it's just victim after victim after victim, and that it's turning them out. And I'll say, like, in all those stories, so I distinctly remember 3 weeks. So I'd say 3 weeks after the video. I mean, obviously my heart was very heavy and burdened for the people that I saw on that night. But all of the stories that came into me afterwards, which far exceeded the stories that I saw in those 11 hours.
Oh, wow.
Way more. I remember telling my wife, saying, I'm glad I did not know these when I did the video, because I would have been much angrier in the video. Now, I said that at the time. Interestingly, when I went back and watched it this week, I was like, well, I was actually pretty angry. I was pretty firm. Maybe too angry. I don't know if it's righteous anger. Probably, as always, it's a mixture of both. But I remember thinking I would have been angrier if I had known all this. And I'll share that. So without using any names, and I'm going to lowball all these numbers because I don't want to lie and I don't want to exaggerate.
Right.
It's going to be higher than everything I said. So there were no less than 6 different families who had lost children, babies, miscarriages, that were directly told, it's your fault. With friends like that, who needs enemies?
Like that was their words. It's your fault. This happened.
That the story that came to me, they were connected to that church, maybe closely connected. Lost baby, lost infant, lost child.
So let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
I have a question from a viewer.
Okay.
That wanted me to ask you this, and I've had it. Says where it biblically proves that we cannot do anything personally to give ourselves cancer or the things that happen to us. A big thing that's been said is that we were out from the umbrella of God's protection. So that kind of touches on what you're saying. You know, it seems like that message there, they were told that it's your fault.
Yeah.
That you've got this wrong with you. Just like you were saying, they were told it's your fault that you've lost this baby. So that question there.
Well, I don't want to jump too far to the other side. I do not negate like the sowing and reaping principle of just life. And, for instance, I have sat at the bedside of a man gasping for his last breath with emphysema and COPD, who was only in his 60s, but looked like he was 90, who in his last breaths were like, I don't understand why God did this to me. Okay. They're sowing and reaping there. I mean, like you smoked every day for your entire life since you were 12. And now, so you can't negate that. Like,
Right.
so certain sinful actions, including the abuse of your body, are going to yield some consequences. You might get cancer, or you might get this disease or that disease. I mean, if you drink every day of your life and you have an alcohol problem, your liver's going to fail. I mean, so I don't want to jump so far the other way to say that there are not real physical, tangible consequences for our sin. There are. However, in the middle, there's a whole lot of mystery there. So that can there be punishment? Yes. Can there be natural consequences? Yes. Can there be, dare I say, even discipline? Like that. And when I say discipline, I mean specifically a Christian, because God only disciplines those He loves and chastises those He cares for. Those are His children. Where He will permit us to suffer for a season in an effort for us to return to Him. That's what discipline is. God can discipline us, and perhaps even discipline us with sickness. So I would even say, like in 1 Corinthians, he says that people have suffered and even died because of the sin. And he's talking about Christians, that they have suffered. So I do not negate that exists. However, and I think without fetching a Bible, I think it's John chapter 9. I might be wrong on that. They brought a boy to Jesus, and they said, like, who sinned, him or his parents? Because that's all they could conceive of. Like, he's crippled, or maybe he was sick. Perhaps I should grab a Bible. But that's the question they asked: who sinned, him or his parents? And the answer is neither. But he's in this condition so that he may display the works of God. So the works of God may be displayed in him. Like, it's not always that simple. It's not always like suffering always is because of sin. Now, in a general way, all suffering is because of sin, because sin has entered into the human race. Therefore, we're fallen. Therefore, disease and turmoil exists because of that. Therefore, one day when sin is eradicated and Christ returns, there will be no more sickness, no more death. Yes, in a general way, that's absolutely true. But it's that judgmental Pharisaical spirit that says, "Oh, A equals B." Like, that's absolutely true. And this is, interestingly, this is exactly what the book of Job is, right?
Sorry about that. I thought I had my sound off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is exactly what the book of Job is. In the book of Job, he's got three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And he has suffered. He has lost everything but his wife. He's lost all of his possessions. He's lost his children. And he is suffering. I mean, he is the epitome of suffering, so that none of us can really say we've ever suffered like Job. And his friends come to him, and they travel to him, and they cry with him, and they pray with him, and they fast with him for 7 days. And then that was the end of their wisdom. Everything after that is just garbage. They spend the next 30 chapters of that book. So some people are familiar with the first couple chapters of Job and the last couple chapters of Job, but it's hard to get through the middle, because it is just them just blaming and blaming and blaming, and Job having to defend himself, because here's the fact: Job had not sinned. Doesn't mean he was sinless, but it is very clear that this tragedy that has come upon him is not connected to his personal sin. Job spends the entire book wanting an audience with God, asking, like, I would like an explanation. The whole book concludes with him getting an audience with God, and God still saying, I don't owe you an explanation. But it's filled with all of these friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, saying, you must have done this, you must have done this, you must have sinned in this way, you must have sinned in this way. And they are wrong. That is clear, because in the end of the book, Job is told by God, or they are told to repent, and told that Job needs to offer a sacrifice on their behalf. So they've clearly been in the wrong this entire time. And, the religious leader or friend that comes forward in your worst moment of pain and weakness to amplify that by pointing out sin, and they don't even have to be precise about it. I don't even know what your sin is, but you obviously have it, or you wouldn't suffer.
You must be doing something wrong, because here you are.
Well, it's not just poor theology. It is poor theology. It's dangerous. Like this, it's unreasonable. I mean, it seems to me very blatantly unbiblical. So, to circle all the way back to your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump on the other side. I don't want to say that sickness never comes about as a result of consequences of sin. It does. Absolutely. Like we will reap what we sow. And when we sow trouble, we should expect to reap it. Which is not always a quick fix either. Right. But this, like, I have this insight, I have this priestly insight and this direct connection to God that I've noticed you're limping. And I just want to tell you, you have sinned. That's why you're limping.
Right.
Like, that's not our duty. Sometimes we may know that. Like, I think we sometimes in our own spirit may have a connection that perhaps my suffering is connected here. But to just say, which is what their allegation is, or their statement, if you walk with God and don't sin, you won't suffer. That's just not true.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, that's I don't know, man. I've always everything happens for a reason, and we may not ever find that reason. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that's happened in my life that I question, and then I'm like, it happened. There's a reason it happened. I may not ever figure out that reason, but you just pick up and you just go on, I've walked away from church a couple of times and just thought, man, I'm done with it, just
Yeah.
because of different reasons. We've recently been attending another church, and we've actually enjoyed it. But yeah, so with that being said, I just don't understand how. I mean, this evangelist and this preacher must have some connection that we don't have with God. For it just seems blatantly telling somebody that when you get out of this water, buddy, everything's gone, right? And then and it just it's crazy for me to grasp the concept of. I mean, I believe in miracles. To think when this gentleman or this lady comes out of the water for whatever reason and they still have that same problem, what goes through their head? Why wasn't I cured? Why didn't he pick me? So and you touch on some of that stuff in your other video. So you spent 2 days there, two different days,
Yeah.
and you said the services were 11, 12 hours long.
Well, between the two, five and six. Yeah.
Okay, one was 5, one was 6, whatever. Yeah, that's right. Because you said you got there like at 5:30. The doors opened at 6, and it was like 5 after midnight or something after they were done with one of them. So how many people do you think went through that? Like,
Well, it's harder.
were they rushing through them, or were they?
Well, it's hard. There's so much movement. There's like the main stage, at least those couple nights. I'm sure they've done it differently. There's the main stage where the microphone was close, and if they thought it was a good interview, they would interview them. Then there was also kind of the other side of the pool where it was pretty obvious that these are probably people who wouldn't make a good interview.
Yeah.
And so they were allowed to go through the water, but nobody was bringing them up or saying anything like
So their
that.
story wasn't getting told because their story wasn't as important as this story. Because this story on the main stage is going to get a lot more applause or whatever. I mean, that's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's right or not.
I think it seems to be fair criticism.
And again, I'm gonna tell you this. I know some people that go to that. I don't know a lot of people that attend that church, but I know several that attend that church, and I don't have any ill will toward them. I mean, we have the freedom of religion, and we're allowed to attend whatever church we go to. Everybody has different beliefs, and that's okay too, and that's the way it should be. But it's just mind blowing for this person's story is not as good as this person. Do you think there was like some kind of monetizational reward for the evangelist to get? Is that why? I mean, I don't know.
I have no evidence to point to anything. A lot of monetary things were shared with me. Nothing I could verify.
Right.
Wouldn't even want to.
Well, I know she said in the video that there was like some kind of registration.
There was.
So what was that about? Do you know what that was about?
I think they wanted information. I think they were
pre-hand information, maybe.
What's that?
Like pre-hand information, or
I don't know.
I think it would be kind of hard to be like, this is John Doe coming up, and here's his card with all of his information.
There was a reason they wanted it. All right, they didn't want to get caught off guard. This is being live streamed. This is being recorded.
Oh, it was live streamed. Okay,
it was. Yeah. So I mean, anybody that watched my video could go back and verify, the incidents that I spoke of, unless they took it offline. I'm not sure if they did. They have taken some stuff offline before, for various reasons, but they wanted it beforehand. I'm presuming, I don't know. I'm presuming that it was because there were some stories that were a little better than others, and those are the ones that they wanted to platform. I think that everybody that registered were able to go through. At times they were moving pretty fast, like cattle through a trough. At times they would stay a while. I don't know if it wasn't working or they were trying to do it a little slower, and so
Didn't have enough soap on them, or
yeah,
so.
I I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's I'm we were raised Baptist. Went to Cave Springs General Baptist Church. And Brother Robert Phillips was the pastor there, and loved that man. And what I always remember about this guy is when he would get fired up, he would spit. And he'd say, "Don't worry about it, brother or sister. It's sanctified."
Yeah.
It was just those things like that. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of just, I don't know and this may be controversial. I don't know if it is or not, but I don't really care about the denomination, right? As long as it's the truth and it's you're seeking God.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're Baptist or if you're Pentecost or if you're, and I guess each denomination, and this is it can be a pretty touchy subject on different things. It can be, different, even Baptist preachers I know, this one may preach this way and this one will preach this way,
Baptist
so
preachers
it's
can't
kind
even get along with each other.
yeah. And then I guess another big thing is, I'm always hear a lot, well, everybody interprets the Bible different. Aren't we supposed to? Or are we not? Do we take the verses and make them fit our life? Is what I guess. You know what I mean? Because I can read something and you may say this is what it means to me, and I'm like, well, this is what it means to me. Am I right or are you right?
So yeah, I wouldn't use the word interpret. So I would use the word we apply it differently.
Okay.
I think my understanding of the Word of God is there's only one interpretation, which is the author's original intent. That's why it is important to not just like proof text and just jump in the middle of your Bible. It matters what the context was. What was talked about beforehand? What was talked about afterhand? What was the things going on? Who's the person that wrote it? What was the culture of the people that were receiving this? All of that is important. Just as if you were to find a letter on the ground with some sensitive information in there, you would like to know, okay, who wrote this? Why'd they write it? Because otherwise, I don't even know. I don't even know if this is to me. I would even say that the Bible is for us, but it's not to us. And we sometimes really look at the Bible like we're walking through a market selecting something we need. I think that's kind of a dangerous way to read the Bible.
Yeah.
I think the Bible is God's revelation of himself. But it's not to us. It's to the original readers, and we walk into their world and we find that there's plenty of truth there that we then apply. So I think there's observation, which is like the hard work that nobody wants to do of like, why was this written? When was this written? What does that word mean? And then there's the interpretation. That's where we're answering the question of what does this mean? Okay. And my rule is it can't mean today what it never meant. Like,
that's good.
It can't mean today what it never meant. Like, if that's not what Paul meant when he was talking about that, then that's not what it meant. But then like the application is very wide. I mean, we may both sit underneath a sermon on forgiveness, and I walk out of there knowing that I need to forgive, my grandma, and you walk out of there knowing that you need to go ask forgiveness of your wife or something,
Right.
That's totally widely different applications. We have different marching orders from that. You may hear a message or read a Bible and be like, I need to stop right now. I need to go seek God's face. I need to pray. And I may say, man, I need to praise. I need to worship him right now. We're going to have different marching orders when we leave God's word. But I think there's one interpretation. Now, you brought something else that I think is really important. This has been like a paradigm that I have tried to utilize. Am I perfect at it? Something called theological triage. And Dr. Albert Mohler wrote an article on this. This was like in 2002, maybe. I mean, it's old. You could Google Albert Mohler theological triage, and this
It's
article.
funny you say 2002 was old.
Yeah,
but anyway,
what is that? 23 years.
Yeah.
So I was in high school. So it was a classic article. It was just an article in a magazine or a book at the time. A book that recently came out by Gavin Ortlund about triage. And when I say triage, and this is your field, right? With primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary is what truths do we have to agree on to be both considered Christians, right? These are primary. These are the things that we're going to fight the hardest for. If you tell me that, Jesus wasn't God, I'm going to say that you have forfeited the right to any longer become a Christian. That is a preeminent primary doctrine of the faith. And you don't get to take a historical religion and a definition and decide you're going to move the furniture on it, right? Like
Right.
this is primary. Secondary are those things that are not required for us to both be Christians, but they are probably required for us to worship in the same church. We're both in the kingdom of God, but these would be things like, are we going to baptize babies? That's a secondary issue. It doesn't affect my eternal salvation, but at the end of the day, this church that we're going to, they're either going to baptize babies or they're not going to baptize babies. And so that's going to be a secondary issue that's going to divide us from worshiping together. A tertiary issue is something that we can both not only be in the kingdom of God, we can be in the same church and have disagreements on. I would say something like, is there going to be a tribulation, or is there going to be a rapture before the tribulation or after the tribulation? There's been a lot of God-fearing, Bible-believing people that had different opinions on that.
Right.
And I really think that we ought to not just both be in the kingdom of God with difference of opinions, but we ought to be able to both worship in the same church,
Yeah.
And so what's primary, what's secondary, what's tertiary? If I have a little bit of regret, like I had to address it, and I'll explain this. Like I talk a little bit about tongues in there. In the video. Tongues is a tertiary issue, right? Actually, it's a secondary issue because if I don't believe that we need to worship in tongues and you do, then we're not going to be able to worship in the same church. This church is either going to be like tongues friendly or not tongues friendly. But it's not primary. Now, it becomes primary if somebody else says this is the test of your salvation. Well, then I'm not elevating it to primary, but you are. You are saying this is you either speak in tongues or you're not a Christian. Now, you have chosen to elevate it to primary. Now we have to deal with it and fight for it like a primary issue. But it's actually secondary, And I really did not want the video to be secondary things. I mean, I'm Baptist. They're not Baptist. What are they? I lay claim that they are Word of Faith. I have never heard them come out explicitly
I
and say
wouldn't
that.
know either.
I don't think they've ever said that. I think they probably call them not. I know for a fact that they've spent years in the community saying we're basically Baptist, and I said that in the video. We're basically Baptist. I think like the curtain's been pulled on that. And if God used my video to do that a little bit, praise God. Like I don't think there's anybody rationally thinking that they're basically Baptist. They're not. I don't know that they've ever embraced the Word of Faith thing, but they are. Although I will say, some of my criticism of the church in the video was some doctrinal imprecision. They liked the mystery. They have, to their credit, they've been a little bit more overt in some of their doctrine for the last couple of years of not like really hiding about it anymore. But I say all that to circle and drain there. What compelled me was not like, hey, let's go meddle in a church that has some things different than us.
Right.
What good does that do? By the way, there was a lot of criticisms of that. Like, hey, this is infighting, right? The world doesn't need a church fighting against each other. But it's like, well, wait, this is not about tertiary stuff. This is not stuff about like, hey, you guys are going to do things differently than we do them. This is about like real people that's really suffering and the gospel itself, which is the primary, right? What is required to be saved? If you're getting that wrong, you're getting everything wrong. So it does require a different level of response than, hey, you use a different Bible version than me.
Yeah, because that's like the primary reason people go to church is to seek God and to follow those core values or beliefs that are written. That would be like I don't want to go to this church because you have traditional music and all you got is a piano player. I want to go to this one that's got the drums and the guitars, and that would be. I guess it could be fall under both secondary and tertiary. I mean, it could be depending on
the person
how it works out. And thank goodness I like both. I love some Southern gospel. I like the old traditional hymns, and I like the contemporary worship music too. So, you go to these services, and you see people and you mentioned a leader in the community. And obviously some people, and I'm not about names or anything like that. Was he able to speak after that? Did you hear anything?
From the people that I knew?
Yeah. Anybody?
Some of the people that I knew reached out to me. One particular one thanked me. They never walked back. They were there that night. I think they were there both nights. They watched my video. They never went back to that church again. And they thanked me, and they told me that, man, I knew something was up, but until you articulated it, I didn't know what it was. Um, no, some of the specific people that I knew, there was a few people that I spoke to afterwards. They reached out to me. Most probably didn't. However, you asked me earlier, there were people that I did not know that were in the water that night,
Right.
who did reach out to me. None of them critical of my video. So I'm going to estimate here again, like 5. I'm going to say 5 people that went through the water, and it would, if anything, it's more than that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Including unbelieving people that weren't even Christians.
Right.
They reach out to me too.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That you're reaching people like that. I mean, that ought to say something.
Well, one of the criticisms is hey, this is such a bad look, and this infighting, and I'd be glad for an unbeliever to watch that video. And some people are like, oh man, an unbeliever can't watch that video. I mean, I've had multiple unbelievers that I've had conversations with from that video, who in the video, like, I do share the gospel at the end and articulate it. But you wouldn't believe like how many unbelievers are out there that they see through the ruse, and that's why they're not going. And so they're writing me, thank you. I had a person, so I did use some strong language. There's a few words I avoided, but I used I use the term abusive.
Yeah.
I had a person reach out to me, former member, not a believer, not anymore, walked away from the faith. I tried to talk to them a little bit, they didn't want to go too far down that road, but they said, I'm really appreciative for your video. I was in that church for a while, and I've always known that I was being spiritually abused. I know that's a hot button word. I'm
Right.
not talking about physical. I'm not talking about sexual. I'm talking about an abnormal use of authority and coercion and manipulation. And they said, I was all of that. And I thank you for saying that, because that's exactly what I experienced there. Well, that opened up an avenue for me to talk to them and to share with them that, hey, you can't judge the Lord. You can't judge the faith by bad experiences. You probably heard that. We have bad experiences at restaurants. We keep going out to eat.
Right.
Experience at a grocery store. We still go.
Yep.
So, yeah, there was a lot of conversation, including just like 2 weeks ago. I had a conversation with a man, unchurched. He's been unchurched. Whether he's a believer or not, I'm not sure. He's been unchurched though for years and years and years. And he said, I watched your entire video, beginning to end. I said, well, let's talk about that. And he had never heard the gospel articulated. Like, he'd been in church before, but he never heard it until that video. And so, yeah, for that, there's no regrets there.
Yeah, so it was worth it. I mean,
was
all the
worth it.
backlash. And it doesn't sound like you received a whole terrible amount of backlash,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sure that you roll into the streets of Marion, and so, and people probably look at you a little different or something, you feel.
Yeah, for sure. That's okay.
And
I mean,
it is okay, because you didn't do it out of anger or like malicious intent.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's hard, is people don't accept that very well.
Yeah.
People will believe what they want to believe, and if they believe in it strong enough, you're going to be wrong no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? Politics
Sure.
is one of the best examples, and religion is another good example of that. It doesn't matter what you do, what you believe in, how you believe. They want you to believe the same way they do, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Right? And whether that's coercion, brainwashed. You use the word dangerous in there on some of the dunks, if you will, submersions, or, just because of their situations and them telling them. And it still blows my mind that, I don't know who the evangelist was, and I don't know the pastor of that church. And I kind of hesitate to even speak on it because I don't know anything about them. But man, they got to be some highly connected men of God to say, we're going to dunk you and you ain't going to have a problem when you come up, and that's tough for me to accept. But I guess if you have that amount of faith, and it's way overused, faith of a mustard seed, whether it's adapted or interpreted, different ways, I don't know. But, throughout your video, and I bring that up again, and I want people to understand that I personally, and everybody's got opinions, and you know what you can do with those, I don't think I never seen any kind of malicious intent. I didn't see a conversation or words in there that you wanted to destroy that church. I think you wanted to bring awareness to these people to say, hey, things aren't always what they seem, and you're being led wrong, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy to me that people.
We all have blind spots where we are looking for affirmation, not information.
Oh, that's good.
So
Yeah.
politics, religion, we want to hear things that make us feel good. We do not want to hear anything that challenges our preconceived ideas.
Right.
You know, if you're a ardent supporter of this politician or an absolute hater of it, you know, he can do no right or he can do no wrong, right? And that's not the truth. Like
Right.
it's something in the middle, and we usually seek out sources that are going to make us feel better about the selections we made. And so a lot of the criticisms that did come my way, even privately, like there's people that didn't like just, watch the video,
yeah.
which that's fine, but talking about any criticism, I didn't really receive any backlash. I had some like secondhand backlash, but
Right.
that's unconfirmable and not scary. But every time I've come into town since then, I get this look, and the last 3 times I've been to the cemetery, are you that guy?
Are you that guy?
I'm that guy,
And
that's who I am now.
And it takes, it's crazy on certain situations like that. Now I'm kind of getting to the point now. I'll be out and be like, hey, you're the guy that's got the TikTok, or you're the guy that's got the podcast, and it's cool. That's that affirmation. It's like it's neat to see, but on your end, it's a little bit. I guess you can kind of be guarded when they approach you that way. Are they gonna give it to you, or are they gonna say thanks? So you pastor your own church, and how did they feel about, like, your congregation feel about that video you put out?
Yeah. So I'm not at the same church that I was pastoring when I
Okay.
put that video out.
Okay.
About 6 months. No. Hold on. I got to do some math here. Yeah, 6 months after that, 7, 8 months after that video was published, I became pastor where I'm at now, which is at First Baptist West Frankfort, Illinois. In terms of the church I was pastoring at the time, there was no really strong feelings one way or the other. As for where I went, when they started talking to me and felt like the Lord may be calling me in that direction, I told them they better watch the video. I pointed them to that, and it's like, hey, this is me at my worst. So if you don't want this, you're not going to want me. So that's kind of the way I dealt with it. Yeah. I realize it's kind of, I heard a long time ago, God called me in ministry. I'll say that. And some people don't understand that.
Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about how you got started in the ministry.
Yeah,
how that came about.
So like that, it's not a profession, it's not an occupation.
Right.
I absolutely feel like it's a calling. But one of the people very early in my life is like, hey, if you really want to be loved by everybody, go sell ice cream. The ministry's not for you.
That's good.
So, you want to choose your words carefully, and there's an incredible amount of responsibility to shepherd a flock and to preach. But if anybody that thinks like you're going to make everybody happy, no, you want to make everybody happy, do nothing and say nothing. Then you'll make everybody happy. Anyway, there was some criticism going back to that. More actually, I probably had friends and family that took more heat than I did because I wasn't around.
Right.
Yeah. I mentioned in the video, I think I was raised in Emmanuel Baptist Church in Marion.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think about age 8, we started going to Union Baptist Church out, toward Midway. So that was most of my Crittenden County childhood. When late high school, I spent a couple years at Calvary Baptist, which is the church I ended up pastoring in Princeton. But Union and Emmanuel, felt a calling of God on my life when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
We had an amazing youth group, amazing pastor, amazing youth leaders.
I remember Emmanuel Baptist having a pretty awesome youth at that church.
Yeah.
Just growing up, I just remember seeing or hearing about all the things the youth was doing. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
So I never got to experience youth group there because I had already left by then. Paul Cannon was my pastor at the time I was saved as a child. And then most of my time at Union Baptist, yeah, probably the majority of it was under Pastor Russ Davidson, which was, I think, his church, first church that he pastored.
He was there for a long time, I feel like.
Yeah, I think he was. Probably 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I feel like it was a long time.
And again, amazing youth group. I mean, it was formative in my spiritual life. So we were actually, I was the youngest, so I'm like probably a seventh grader in that 7th through 12th youth group. We're doing like a youth camp out of town, like for children. So I'm like barely older than the kids that we're ministering to, doing a VBS to. I love to tell a story. We're playing games with them, crafts and all that kind of stuff, rec, and then nighttime is like serious time, where we come into the chapel and we have a worship service and stuff like that. We are trying to corral them. We're trying to bring them in. Game time's over, all that. And these kids are out of control. And like remember 2 of these kids doing backflips off the front pew. And like, I think our youth leaders were like, hey, get them under control. We're about to preach. We're about to do our worship time. Get them under control. And I got like this overwhelming like burden inside of me, and that like they didn't understand it was serious time. Like, so I'd like to think I have a little bit of a sense of humor. Yeah. But my daddy said playtime's playtime and serious time's serious time, you know. And he was, Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is a time for everything under the earth, right? Right. Time to sow, time to reap, time to laugh, time to cry. And so here I was, instilled by my father and then led by the Spirit, like it is time for serious time, which is why we're here. We want these people to know Jesus, and we couldn't get them under control. Well, I got emotional, and I go back to the back in this bathroom, open this bathroom up, shut the door. Nobody's in there, kind of lock it, and I'm crying, and I'm like looking in the mirror, and I just like remember saying, God, why can't they understand how serious this is? Why can't they understand? And not an audible voice, I don't think, but it might as well have been. It was like the Lord said, you're going to help them. And I walked out of that bathroom knowing that I was going to preach. I didn't know like at the time, like whether I was going to pastor, although I kind of always just eventually grew into like just knowing that's what God had called me to do. But I knew when I walked out of there at 12 that God was going to use me to help them understand that this is serious. And I still think, by the way, I think like that has been such a drive obviously from the beginning of my ministry, that remains like my motivation today. Like we don't give God the reverence that he deserves, that we need, and we play church, and these things are deadly serious, and there's a lot of joy and fun in this world, but generally speaking, we don't take things serious enough. And so that was my call. That was my motivation. I did not, what we call in Baptist life, surrender to the ministry until I was 18. And so I got some counsel at the time. They were like, oh, you need to go do something else. And I was like, I'll be a pharmacist. Went to Murray State. I'll be a teacher. And I was a freshman at Murray State. And I was like, no, I know God has called me to pastor. So that kind of publicly, and then tried to get a degree, stayed there 5 semesters, and I was just miserable. I was like, I've got to go get a Bible education. And so from there, I transferred out, ended up getting a degree in Bible, and ended up finally later getting a master's in counseling. So yeah, that was my call. That was my original call to ministry. I tell people I don't have a job. I have a calling. People all the time are like, hey, what made you choose to go into the ministry? And it's like, I don't want to say it like wasn't a choice. Right. But it wasn't like career day at school. Right. And they were like, hey, here's one where you can only work on Sundays, which is kind of an ongoing joke, right? Like, you just get to work on Sundays, you get to golf every other day. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. But it was a compelling, like, I must preach the gospel. And so that was my call, and he sustained that. And I've had plenty of times along the way where I've fumbled a lot, said some foolish things, done some foolish things, second guess whether maybe preaching is not cut out for me, you know? But God has continued through various seasons to affirm that, like that I'm where I'm supposed to be, and I've never been more certain in my life that I'm exactly in the place I'm supposed to be, doing what God has called me to do.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, are you able to pack around stones to throw? Because well, I guess what I'm kind of being silly and asking is, everybody thinks these pastors and these preachers and are or should be perfect and without sin, right? Mm-hmm. How tough is that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was told that speaking of the video, like somebody in the comment section was like bringing stuff up from when I was in high school or something. I don't know. And I thought, uh, I was told that because I don't even think I read that part. I was like, man, they should call me. I could give them a lot fresher material,
Right.
you know? Uh, yeah, pastors certainly should be exemplary in their
To
conduct
strive
and,
for that,
and
right?
should be living holy lives.
I
That's a,
guess what I'm saying is
yeah.
you mess up sometimes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just
So I think that was something I kind of began to learn early in my ministry, is you feel that pressure to be perfect, which is, it's to some degree good pressure. But if that ends up leading you to cover up and massage over all of your mistakes, like you're heading the wrong direction, man.
yeah.
And I did some of that early on, and that was just folly. But you have to own it, and actually, I think people will give you a lot better hearing if they don't think that you need to live a different enough life that they think you have some kind of credibility in what you're talking about.
Right.
But you don't need to live such a different life that they're like, how could I ever connect with that guy? Like he is so holier and above
Right.
me, and
Yeah.
and then you posit yourself as completely unrelatable to anybody else. So, one of my preaching professors said in high school, like, you better not be, or in college, you better not be the hero of all of your illustrations.
Ooh.
And I've always thought that, um, if I'm going to share an illustration like in a sermon, I'm probably going to tell them how I failed, as much as I think they can handle, because they probably
Yeah.
can handle all of it. But, I fail. I fail every day. And so we all fall short of the glory of God, and we're striving for holiness. And so, yeah, but in my case, certainly the veracity of my message is going to be tied to my character, and that's part of it. I welcome that. Uh, it should be that way, but yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like it's just yeah, not even being a pastor or preacher is tough on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So if there is, and we'll circle back to the video, if there is a message that you can just bottle up and give to everybody about that video, what would it be?
Like my reaction 3 years later, or like my
Yeah,
summary of it.
looking back 3 years later, what is the message? Because people are probably going to go and they're going to hunt this video down after they see this.
Yeah.
They're going to watch that. You know what the message is. I know what the message is after watching it a few times that I've watched it. But for somebody who doesn't know, what were you trying to convey from that video?
Let's go back to the original motivation. My friend, before I even decided to make a video or even thought about it, my friend, I felt like was going in the right direction. Like that friend, by the way, since is like unfriended me on Facebook, like the ultimate diss.
Oh man,
Not the only one, but so
I think it's a daily for me. So it's
yeah,
okay.
he didn't. So he didn't receive it well. So many did, and a lot did. A lot did, by the way, privately.
Yeah.
A lot would say, "Hey, you can't say this, but this is what's going on,"
Right.
because they feared repercussion. They said, "Hey, I can't friend you on Facebook because I have people that are watching."
Oh, ain't that something?
Yeah.
I get a lot of that.
Yeah,
I get a lot of people that watch my videos that won't friend me on Facebook because they don't. Oh, well,
really?
so and so don't like you, so I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it happens. I mean, not to
And it happens
go
to
back.
everybody.
It
You know
does.
what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I had people that more than I'm going to say at least a half dozen that said something to the effect of, "Hey, this is tearing our family apart, and I can't see a criticism of it because my kids will take my grandkids away from me, or vice versa." Like a half dozen families,
Yeah.
but I need you to know I support you, but I can't like your video, and I can't like tell anybody that I've seen it, but I support you, and I need you to help me with this because I'm trying to navigate this. But there was a lot of that.
So how do you feel about that when somebody tells you that? How do you handle that?
Well,
Like, do you just tell them, suck it up, buttercup, do the right thing? Or, I mean, you know what I mean? How do you handle that?
well, I think that like the one regret is like to go back to those 450 messages. It was just in the first month. It's probably like 600 now. Like I wish I could spend more time and have a personal conversation with every one of those because I'm willing to do that. Some of them had some really difficult like ethical decisions to make, and I told them that they needed to follow up with another pastor somebody that's local that can really talk and walk with,
Right.
like, because I can talk you through it, but I can't walk you through it because
Right.
I'm not your pastor and I'm a long way away.
Yeah.
And you need to navigate this. There were some people that I was like, hey, you need some courage, but then there was others that I'm like, man, I don't know what I'd do if I had that situation, if I was getting faced with that kind of, if you do this, you're going to do that, and if so. I guess my answer is each of those was tailored a little bit differently. But I was saying, like, to go back to the original person, like,
Yeah.
I love him and I still love him, and was really celebrating what God was doing in his life, and to some degree, like, still celebrate like what God's doing in his life if he's continuing to walk with him. And like God said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and then love your neighbor as yourself. It's like the grand summary of all the law: love God and love people. Like,
Right.
I think that the motivation of every Christian is I love God, I love people, I want them to get together. That's like
Yeah.
that's what drives our evangelism. I love people. I want you to know my God, and I want you to be introduced. So when I peek behind the curtain and I see like this is real damage, so my first motivation, my first thought was like that one friend that got me there. Like I want to stand from the rooftop and I want to shout, and I may be called crazy, and I will certainly am willing to do that. It's like, well, like, would you scream at your kid? Like, well, no, I'm not going to scream at my kid. Okay, well, how about if they're playing in traffic? Well, yeah, okay, I'll scream at my kid. Why? Because like I don't really care what the neighbor thinks right now. He's in traffic, and therefore I'm more than happy to be misunderstood by that guy thinking I'm screaming at my kid, if I can like get my kid to listen to me and get out of traffic. So that's kind of the way I
That's
looked at
good.
it.
I like that. I like you
Yeah.
put it together.
I can't say I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I was godly trouble, hopefully. Did I do it perfectly? Probably not. I think that even if there had not been any fruit from it, I would have known that God had really compelled me to put the video out. But that's a theoretical. There was.
Right.
There's an incredible amount of fruit from it. There was an incredible amount of people that got to talking, that started attending church. There were people that left that church, to which I rejoice. I just rejoice at that. I don't hide that. Like, I'm absolutely rejoicing that they're not going there anymore, and not that they're going home, but that
Right.
they went somewhere else and they're being fed and they're being shepherded. But I can't see people being harmed and not have a reaction to that. That it was like, once I peeked behind the curtain, like the easier thing would have been to don't go, just don't go. Not your
Right.
circus, not your monkeys. Once I went, now I'm compelled to do something. And I think that's kind of true. It's kind of a universal truth in life. Like, you are responsible for what you know.
See something, say something.
Yeah. And you don't get to say, I don't know, I didn't know anything about that. So the video was not a criticism of tertiary subjects. It's not a criticism of minor theological beliefs that, hey, Christians just disagree on. It was like, you're getting the gospel wrong, and when you get the gospel wrong, people get hurt, and and I can't watch people get hurt and not take the opportunity. If you're going to be told a lie, I'll be willing to be there to tell you the truth. So
Yeah.
that was my compelling.
Yeah, I could imagine that was tough. I mean, especially knowing people that go to that church and you feeling like you felt of people, dangerous. Like, some of the stuff was dangerous.
Yeah.
That had to be tough. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. As even in first responders worlds, as doctors, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, whatever, we're mandated reporters. If we see,
Yeah.
we go into a house and we see that there's dangerous living conditions or somebody's being abused or whatever, we're supposed to, by law, report that. And it's tough sometimes when you go in knowing that this person is doing everything they possibly can to give this other little person the best life possible, but it's not working out, right?
Yeah.
So how do you handle that? Like, it weighs on your conscience, like
Yes.
it weighs on your heart, and it's tough sometimes. But in order for that process to start, sometimes it's the hardest step is the first step. That's what I always heard a preacher say that.
Oh yeah.
A Baptist preacher, he'd
Yeah.
always say, "Come on, it's time." First step's always the hardest step.
Yeah.
After that, it's just you're just going to walk with God and you're going to learn your own path and whatever. But yeah, man. So I applaud you for doing that, because it's you see these churches that bring out the snakes, and it kind of, I guess it kind of falls into all those different beliefs. And
The main thing has to be the main thing, right?
Yeah.
Jesus died, Jesus resurrected, Jesus ascended, Jesus is coming again. Salvation is by grace through faith. It's not of yourselves. There's nothing you can do to earn it. You don't deserve it. But God is willing to show favor upon you and treat. And as simple as the gospel may be, like we have a lot of gospel ignorant people and scripturally ignorant people, and that I don't mean stupid. I mean ignorant. Like they just don't know. Like
Right.
people don't know what they don't know. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "He made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." Now that's a really tight gospel explanation, but there are people that are even Christians and people that have been going to church that could not articulate that. That okay, so you got saved. Jesus, why did Jesus die? Why did Jesus die on the cross? Oh, he took my sins that I may take his righteousness. And he has offered this to me, not by any acts I perform, but only by faith. So there's like a beauty and a simplicity there that there are some people that they don't know that. Like churches don't know that. There are people in the Bible Belt that don't know that. You go door to door and ask people like, hey, how do you get to heaven? Like, I'm going to tell you, like 4 out of 5 people have no idea
Wow.
or really they'll say something. They'll usually talk about being a good person. I mean, but they really don't know the gospel. And so that was a big driving force. Something else that motivated me, I was going to say is like, I don't pastor the perfect church. I love my church. My church is awesome. They're so good to me and they love the Lord and inspire me. Pastored 3 different churches. None of them been perfect, but like I have seen what church is at its best. Like, and when I think about like the fondest memories I have of church. So I'll tell you this one. I've been thinking about this really the last few days. Like one of the fondest memories I have of church was actually in a waiting room at Western Baptist when I was a kid. I was going to Union Baptist Church, and my dad had a medical episode, and he did like physically die on the table. He bleeding ulcers, and it was awful. And I mean, I was a kid. Like I don't know if I was like 9 at the time. I couldn't have understood the magnitude of the fact that my dad is really close to dying. And so we're at Western Baptist at the time. We're in the waiting room, and over the course of a few hours, all of a sudden the waiting room is filled with 40 church members. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And people say, like, they'll never, people, I've heard this, maybe you haven't heard this, but they're never going to remember what you said, but they're going to remember the way you made them feel. That's true of ministry. That's true of life. That's true of leadership.
Yeah.
I remember the way the 40 people in my church made me feel that day when they came to a waiting room at a hospital because my dad was on the brink of death. And that is church, and that is family, and that is like friendship and love forged in our common share and our common bond in Jesus Christ. There is a beauty to that has been unmatched, and that was 30 years ago for me. Now, and then when I see this, and I know from experience and multiple stories that families that find themselves in that same situation I was in have not found folks that have drawn near to them to walk in pain and suffering with them, but have been there to throw the stones.
Oh yeah.
So I know what church is supposed to be. I've seen it at its best. I've seen the beauty and the unity of that shared faith, and I have seen people suffer. That's when I say, like, if you have friends like that, if you have a church like that, that's going to draw near to you in your worst and most vulnerable moment, in the time of your deepest pain, to stab you. Who needs enemies?
Yeah.
Who needs enemies? And not only do you need to be a part of a doctrinally sound gospel preaching church that preaches the Bible, like you need to be in a community of people that will not try to identify what is wrong with you when you're suffering, like not chiefly, but is actually going to walk with you in your suffering.
That's crazy.
That's love,
Yeah, that's unconditional. I mean, honestly, and and we'll wrap this up. But you also mentioned in your video that they didn't even preach the gospel. They didn't open the Bible, and the one time or they did, they completely butchered the verse they were quoting or whatever. And that was both nights.
That's both nights.
There was no sermon, if you will, preached or given to let those who don't know who Jesus is to find out. So, and you talked about that. How are you going to come in here and get this if you don't even know who he is or what he does or how he does it, right? And that's crazy to me. I don't.
I operate with this paradigm that I don't have anything to say. Like, people don't come to church on Sunday to hear me talk about politics or share my opinions on stuff. the only voice I have is from the Word. I realize that not every church operates from that paradigm. Like the Word of God is the rule of all faith and practice, and so it's very odd for me. And I realize, I think that happens to be the paradigm, that the proper one, that like when we gather together, like we should be led by the Word, and the Word should undergird everything. And so, yeah, and I think it could be an oversight in other churches where we just kind of assume knowledge on the audience, and maybe that was what was going on. Maybe it's just an assumption of knowledge on the audience. But like when the story of Jesus is not articulated, and hey, maybe they did it the third night, maybe they did it the fourth night. Maybe this was like, maybe somebody would say, well, that wasn't the goal of that. That was just healing and immersion. Like we do gospel preaching on other. I don't know. Maybe that's it. But
wouldn't you think you would want to know what you were going to? You know what I mean?
they
An
knew.
introduction.
Yeah, they did know that there were people there that were unchurched and to some degree unbelieving. They knew that there were people that had come there because they advertised it that way. Come and get your healing, and spread that net wide. Come and get your healing. So they knew there's going to be people in the room tonight who are here for healing and miracles, and their ADHD being cured, and their type 2 diabetes, and the chromosomal problems in their children. We know the audience is going to be filled with those people tonight. And so it's hard to say it's just an oversight unless it's just intentional to say, let's not share the main thing tonight. Let's not share about Christ or sin and repentance and faith. Let's legitimately spend 11 hours in this room and never open a Bible. I mean, it's hard for me to fathom too.
Yeah, I understand that. So, what's your favorite Baptist joke?
Favorite Baptist joke?
Everybody's got them.
Oh man,
come on! I know you got a good one.
Favorite Baptist joke? I mean, well, this is probably too serious for a joke. I mean, any joke about how fat Baptist pastors are is a good one, because there's a good joke always has an element of truth in it, and
right.
Baptist pastors probably ought to take better care of their body so that they could have a little bit better platform. But the criticism's fair, and so let the jokes about fried chicken keep coming. But yeah, I mean, I don't have one off the top of my head, but I've laughed at quite a few over the years.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but yeah, I mean, I like I said, I grew up Baptist, and I know a lot of really good Baptist preachers that I love with everything. Like I said, I mentioned Brother Robert Phillips is probably my all-time favorite. Just love something about that man. George Hollis, like he's done a lot for me in my childhood growing up. He's been a constant mentor for me. Kenny Odom was another one. Love that man to death, and his family. But there, there's always those Baptist jokes, and they're always funny, So I didn't know if you had one of your favorites that you've heard along the way or something.
The best humor is both critical and partially true. So yeah. So yeah, the jokes that criticize Baptists for their buffets or their not buffets, their potlucks. Yeah, those are good. Those are worth it.
And people criticize that. It's never been to one. Once, I'm telling you, you get these people into a Baptist potluck.
Oh
man, they'll come every Sunday if you put that on.
Oh, they will.
Some good food, man. And some of them ladies can cook, boy.
Yeah,
some of them can cook.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to get controversial. I just had some people reach out, and they just kind of wanted an update on where it was. I don't know anything about that church. So I can't speak a whole lot on it. Like I said, I know a few people that's gone and left it, and I've heard stories, and I know people that still go there. Hopefully it's kind of, they're there for the right reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be tough going to a church that you really like, and then something coming out it runs you off from it. Because I mean, it can turn people away pretty quick. But I really do appreciate your time. I really appreciate you coming down here, and hopefully I've given the ones especially that reached out to me what they wanted. I didn't want to sit here and pick anything apart, but I just wanted to hear how it has been going, especially since the 3-year anniversary just popped up just a couple weeks ago or something.
Yeah, well, I guess it would have been early March.
Yeah. So, and if I have your permission, I'm going to share your video as well, to kind of put it together with this one so people can understand what you experienced firsthand without us having to sit here and go through the whole thing again. When there's already a video out there, I don't want to sit here and have to make you do that again. I think we touched on a lot of good things. And is there anything you want to say before we go? Is there a message out there that you want to give?
No, I mean, I think I said it earlier. Whether you're a faithful believer or an unfaithful believer, or not walking with the Lord, or just not trusting Christ at all, Yeah, why do we have to argue about all of these seemingly minor things in conflict and controversy? Well, because the gospel matters so much, and it's life and death, and we have to build a fence and protect the things that we love the most. We have to. We do. We naturally do. And so therefore the gospel, among the most cherished, it needs a fence protected around it. It needs built around it. It needs to be protected. And when something artificial emerges, it has to be called out. So yeah, be courageous. If you're in this, if you're caught in this, be courageous. Seek counsel, get wisdom. And I think as you seek the Lord, I think he always, and get information, again, whether you were a big supporter of the video because you already had problems with it, but you never watched it, you're not informed.
Yeah.
Or you were told, hey, don't watch that video somewhere. Make sure you unfriend him on Facebook, or make sure you don't talk about it or share anything about it. And, man, some of the people that shared it that ended up getting in trouble for it. You need,
People
you
got in
should push
trouble
back. Yeah, there were some people that got in trouble for sharing it.
by their parents, or
No, but other people.
I
But
I
yeah,
think you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
yeah, they got in trouble. They got called out, and
I bet
multiple people that were told explicitly, hey, you need to take that down. And some did. That's fine. Everybody has their own decisions to weigh
Right.
benefit and risk. But you know, I would welcome a line by line refutation of what I did. No one even tried.
Wow.
No one even took a shot at it. And don't do it on video. Don't want to do it on video. To do it or hey, let's go have coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just go line by line through this and tell me where I'm wrong, and maybe I'll hear you out. Maybe I got some stuff wrong. Nobody made that shot. Nobody made that attempt.
None of the leaders from.
Oh no,
No. See, I feel like that I would be like, hey, look, you got me wrong. Let me come and explain myself to you, or I feel like that's what I would have done, and I can't say that because I'm not in that position. But I mean, accountability is a big thing. So
yeah.
uh, but yeah, man, I appreciate you coming down. I know it was a little bit of a drive. At least you get to go see your sister.
Yeah.
That's I remember her from school, and her husband. I've known her husband for a long time. I've always been a big fan of him growing up. Of course, he's a little older than I am. And your sister, I remember your sister from chorus. Does she still sing
Yeah, I
to
think she sings
herself?
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, just running around the house.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Well, I'm glad at least you got to see your sister today.
Yeah.
So, but Darrick, Brother Darrick, Pastor Darrick, whatever
Yeah.
you go by, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And again, hopefully that answered some of the questions, and at least give somebody something to talk about, and maybe causes them to open their Bible and find some truth.
Yeah.
That would be the best thing that we can get out of this. So, with that being said, my buddy Frenchie always says, y'all be good to each other.